Okay, you can do this.
I know. Carvana makes it so convenient to sell your car. It's just hard to let go. My car and I have been through so much together.
But look, you already have a great offer from Carvana. That was fast.
Well, I know my license plate and VIN by heart, and those questions were easy.
You're almost there. Now to just accept the offer and schedule a pickup or drop-off.
How'd you do it? How are you so strong in letting go of your car?
Well, I already made up my mind, and Carvana's so easy.
Yeah, true. And sold.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 88. I'm your host, Chris Webster, with my co-host, Paul Zimmerman. Today we talk to archaeologist Bill Whitehead about drones and all things tech in CRM. Let's get to it. All right, welcome to the show. Paul, how's it going?
Pretty good, Chris. How you doing today?
Not too bad. Stressing out with some end of summer stuff, but I think
Likewise.
A conversation about drones, we'll solve all those problems. So let's go ahead and get right into this because we've only got two segments, and I want to bring on our guest, and our guest is Bill Whitehead. Bill, how's it going?
Pretty good. Here in lovely central New Mexico.
Nice. Well, why don't you give our listeners a little idea about who you are and what you do professionally, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Bill Whitehead, and I'm a cultural resource specialist for SWCA Environmental Consultants, and I am a drone pilot, part of the drone corps for our company.
Okay. You have your FAA Part 107 license?
Correct.
Outstanding. You know, our producer, Christine, got us hooked up because of a drone conversation. And so I want to know, how long has SWCA been in drones, first off?
Well, the company has been, we started about 2 years ago with a GIS specialist in Pasadena who wanted to, he's probably one of the first to get a Part 107 license. He was an ex-Navy pilot. And he started the drone program more with a videographer's mindset. And he brought that idea to other departments and other offices in the company. And Jesse Shuck and I, he's also another pilot in our office, we wanted to take that into the analytical realm. How can we use the capabilities of photogrammetry, which come along with taking pictures from a drone? How can we use the primary analytical tool of drone photography? How can we use photogrammetry to improve everything we're doing? And from there, you just start talking about platforms and equipment and missions and how to do it right and how to then take this data and apply it to all of the client's needs.
There you go. So what kind of equipment? I mean, we'll start at the beginning here. What kind of equipment are you guys flying right now?
Well, if you're going to do this drone work, I suggest that you start off small, i.e. the DJI series of equipment is pretty darn good for your money. It's prosumer. The Phantom 4 Pro, Phantom 4 Pro version 2 now, those are pretty much your introduction drone. It's going to run you $2,000 to $3,000, depending on how many batteries and the accessories that you buy. But with that and some freeware to do automated flights, you can start doing drone work almost immediately. But now the hard part is just like playing Go. Yeah, you'll learn how to fly a drone, but it's going to take you years to get good at it.
For sure. So what are you guys flying now?
Well, we're flying an Event 38 drone, and we have almost the full line of DJI's products, Phantoms, Inspires, an M210. And of course, we're always looking toward the future for other manufacturers that are producing some really cutting edge equipment that will increase our capacity. Now, as a civilian pilot, there are limitations. Right. That we all have. If we were working for DOD or some other, alphabet agency, we could then get into the, $10 million Boeing, Predator drones with, a 10-pound payload, not a big deal,
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're a DJI company right now because they produce a solid fleet solid equipment, and then there are always companies that will mod out that equipment to your specifications, and we've done that already.
You're talking in the plural here. How many people are at SWCA are involved like you with the drones?
Well, right now we have 18 licensed pilots, and we have about 14 pieces of equipment. And in the world of drone, I mean, we're small to medium. We're not big. Some of the large survey companies and engineering companies that are doing this for other purposes, they have a lot more, stuff.
I'm wondering how do I put this? I'm wondering how routine drone work has become yet for you guys. Is it part of the normal workflow, or is it still kind of a special add-on that's like, oh, for this project, we'll do some photogrammetry over here, or is it just understood that it's part of your workflow these days?
It's becoming a normal part of the workflow, because when I do a data recovery, I like to have, at minimum, the most accurate, up-to-date base map that I can then put all of my excavations into that current context. The free, slightly free, not so expensive satellite data that you can purchase from Esri or the stuff from Google Earth, or whatever group you want to get your information from, you're always at their pleasure. When do they have the last data? And I know that there's companies that can give you daily if you like, but for being competitive in the market, that's too expensive. So if I can spend 2 hours flying, about a 10 to 20 acre site at very high resolution, and then use that as the base map, and it also gives me all my elevation, my digital elevation model on top of this beautiful ortho image, that helps put the entire work into a context. And I've been winning proposals and actually some grants to actually do this photogrammetry in New Mexico. And it seems like that's pretty much where we're phasing into. Every project that we do, there is a way of integrating this new technology. River work, all the natural resource side, all of the cultural resource side. There's a way of getting basically beautiful images and the analytical data you can acquire from those beautiful images, getting that into a product for one of our clients.
I'm wondering also, well, first I got to make a comment on something you mentioned about the DJI suite of drones, how you've got the full DJI complement over there, which I think is great, because I've seen it other companies and I've talked to different people, and you just pay attention. It's usually kind of the tinkerers in the company that end up bringing drones into it. And then, they're the people that like kind of getting into it. Often it's GIS people who know a little bit about scripting and stuff like that. So they'll want to get into some open source type of stuff. But I'll be honest with you, you don't get open source vehicles for your field work. You get trusted vehicles that work, that go out there all the time, that you don't have to worry about. And I think if somebody's just getting into drones, even if they're not just getting into it, they've been doing it for a few years, you use what works. And DJI just works out of the box 9 times out of 10. So, Yeah,
exactly. And the whole point is reliability, because the cost of deployment is so much. It costs so much to get people in the field. I don't want my tool to not work. I've had that happen in the field. I'm doing for my daughter's dance studio. They're going to repaint the outside. It's a big warehouse. They want to repaint it, do all kinds of murals and fun stuff. So, I can map your warehouse for you. So I go down there, and guess what? The equipment doesn't work because I have bad GPS signal. Now, let's say that's, something that is normal. But what if I had a piece of equipment that didn't have a fail-safe to tell me that my GPS signal was bad and it flew anyway?
Right.
The kind of dummy controls that you get, the fail-safes, the inability to override certain conditions that come with these commercial products is actually a benefit, even though you may not think of it as a benefit. I could have been flying unsafe in an urban environment and potentially cause an accident because the drone would just say, I don't know where I'm going. Bang. And it crashes into someone's house. And then I'm liable for that damage. So, you can do all this stuff. I mean, there's amazing stuff out there. But if you're a graduate student, if you're someone who just wants to get into it, don't go big, go small. Go small. and go reliable. And I'm not a shill for the company. I'm not being paid by them. But in our experience, we've been able to fly hundreds of hours with that equipment with very little problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the cameras that they're putting on those are very good. And especially, some of the video that you can get is also very good. A 4K, resolution camera, Zymus 5S.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good cinematographic camera. But now you're putting that on a $20,000 drone. But, that's an M210.
Right.
But still, that's still a very reliable piece of equipment. And, a lot of U.S. manufacturers produce very good drones, but it seems to me that you have to be a radio control aircraft enthusiast to really get the most out of those vehicles. You have to basically be someone who knows how to do it before you get that stuff.
Right.
The fixed wing aircraft and a lot of the things. So if you don't know, RAC, then you're going to have a very, very long learning curve.
Yeah, that's a good point. Fixed wing is no joke. You really have to know how to fly to do fixed wing. And even, I think we get spoiled with the drones these days too, because even a lot of the cheaper drones out there, from the DJI, Spark and those little ones that they have now, and a lot of them, they all have GPS these days. And I have an Inspire. I have an Inspire Pro 1, and I was flying that on the Oregon coast, and I went to fly under this, this cement bridge, and then come up the other side of it, and it is just on the coast over there. And when I went under the bridge, it lost the GPS signal, and because the bridge is full of concrete and rebar. Go figure, right? Yeah. It lost the GPS signal, and I was going super slow, right? And then I stopped because I was like, okay, it's doing some things, and you don't realize how much the GPS is compensating for drift, because I'm also a fixed wing pilot, and and I know that when you're flying an airplane, you rely on the trim tabs to really lock in your flight controls and keep that going. But there's no trim on the DJI system. There's no trim. The trim is the GPS. The GPS is keeping you steady. And when you lose that GPS, man, you're done.
Yeah, and for me, I've never done flight simulation software. When we're out there flying the Event 38, this big fixed wing guy, it's white knuckle flying.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you thought about some of the smaller, I call them backpack drones, like the DJI Spark or something, or not the Spark, what's the Mavic Pro that folds up?
The Mavic Pro.
Have you thought about some of that stuff I've had this theory in my head, but I haven't actually tried it yet, on giving these to field crews, because they're super lightweight. You can pack them up into a little container, and when they go out there to do site overviews, just literally throw it up for like 2 minutes, snap a couple pictures, and bring it back down, throw it back in your backpack, and get real site overviews, not these 5.5 feet off the ground site overviews that we're all used to.
Oh, well, those are junk. I mean, literally, that's because someone thought that that's a good idea, that you should have a photograph of the site. But it's like, that's a pro forma.
They're totally useless.
To do. Yeah, totally useless. But no, that is something that we were actually exploring, because we want to be able to do that. And those guys, what is it, $1,200?
Mm-hmm. Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, a fourth of the cost of a Trimble.
Right. Well, you don't need a Mavic Pro, though. I mean, you don't need a Mavic Pro to do that. You can buy a $200 drone that you just throw up in the air, and even in a heavy wind condition, it only needs to stay aloft for a second to get a couple photos and bring it back down. So. Yeah,
and if some of the folks, the limiting factor for us is having the Part 107 licensed pilot, that crew member, because it's good. It's a commercial endeavor, and because we're going to do it commercially. Like for the Forest Service, or for, the State Land Office here in New Mexico, and the Bureau of Land Management cannot regulate as long as we're in Class G airspace, i.e. open and unregulated. But as soon as you get into Class E, or you get into private land, or you get into national forest, or you get into wildlife reserves, or God forbid, you get into Department of Energy, Department of Defense, other places, you have to have a permission.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one of the things that could limit it. That's the only thing I see that could limit that. And otherwise, go for it. If you have Part 107 pilots, get actual real site overviews. No, it's great.
I don't pay attention too much anymore to job postings, like Shovel Ones postings and things like that. But I have yet to see, a listing that says carry 50 pounds over rugged terrain, multiple weather environments. Oh, and a Part 107 FAA drone license.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet, but I'm waiting.
Expect to see that in the next few years. That's going to
imagine.
come because, well, obviously there are still CRM firms that don't use GPS technology. They use paper. There are still firms that do that. There are firms that are fairly progressive and, like to be not on the bleeding edge, but at least, halfway up the curve when it comes to technology. And, we're all progressing toward that. And eventually, I think, it's not going to happen. A lot of those firms, they'll never change. So 5-10 years from now, I think this might be an expectation of having this kind of data recovery, data recording, just for state standards. And I had that conversation at a meeting. The New Mexico Archaeological Council held a meeting, and we were doing a historic buildings training session, and we had a lot of folks from the state, from the Office of Historic Preservation, and they were concerned that if we start recording information at this level of detail and this quality, where are they going to put it all?
Right.
Where is it going to go? Because I can give them beautiful, renderings, these 3D, flybys. We can have all this data, and it's not going to be the same as a HABS drawing, but it can be just as detailed and different. Like, well, what am I going to do with 2 gigs? We barely, we were barely keeping up with the amount of information that are coming in every day from recording new sites.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to make us now, start putting in tens to hundreds of terabytes of storage, and we have to archive that indefinitely because that's our basically our mandate. How will this happen? So the state regulators are aware that this is happening, and we are still trying to figure out what to do, especially in the compliance industry. Because in the academic world, all that information just disappears. It just poof, it's gone.
Yeah, totally.
The graduate student gets disgruntled or leaves, or they get a new job, and the disk that they have the information on gets lost or stolen or damaged or just fails to work. All that data is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And TDAR is obviously one of the locations that we could start thinking about, but I don't know if they're ready yet for the amount of information, because unless the National Science Foundation, gives them millions and millions of more dollars to start, purchasing all those terabytes of storage space, we are going to experience a data, crunch. Now, we put in at our company, just for our little local office, we put in 20 Ts, and in less than 3 months, I'm already a quarter full. So now you start doing the math. And this is just with me doing one project every month. Now, what if we have multiple people? So that's another thing for all the folks who are wanting to get into this. Never, never, never forget that you're going to have terabytes of data coming, and you can't have one copy of it, because then you have no copies of it. You need 3 or 4 copies of it, so you'll have 1 or 2 copies of your data, because you spent all that time and money collecting it. Now what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to make it available to other people who would also, like to, and in some cases you're mandated to give them that data, especially if it's an NSF project. You're getting funding from NSF. I have the right to that data at some point. How am I going to get it?
For sure.
So that's something that we're all wondering what we're going to do. As a company, individually, at the state level, they're smart people. They're aware of it. And then as individuals, you all are probably wondering, I have a bunch of these Western digital hard drives, and they're looking kind of old. Does it still spin? And am I going to have a computer that can actually read it?
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Well, we will tackle some of those questions and some more tech stuff on the other side of the break. Back in a second.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
All right, welcome back to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 88. We are talking with Bill Whitehead about drones, and I think we're going to end up getting into a few other topics here. So let's keep on going. First off, I have a question, Bill, about your drone work. Now, you've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but is the drone work to the point where it's right now it sounds like it's an add-on to a lot of projects. You're doing different things, or you're enhancing some of the data you were getting before. You're just getting like a better base map and things like that, like you were mentioning. Is it saving the company money yet, or is it still an add-on to a project? Like it might be a little bit more, but the clients are like, yeah, but it's worth it, so let's do it.
Well, in the initial days here, these are companies that have the vision, that have individuals in their engineering departments and their GIS departments who would like to see this moving forward. We've already been through the LiDAR, and LiDAR has a lot of great uses. It's a known standard for a lot of companies, especially big engineering companies that need 100 miles mapped because they're going to be doing road work. But those LiDAR images are not as good or different than what we can do. So we're now getting work from clients that are specifically drone based. Mm-hmm. They want to do things that are different, and they want to try and achieve cost savings, because you are not dealing with LiDAR companies that have to fly planes and scheduling and all this other stuff. If we can do this as an add-on to existing field work, and we can get the same results as LiDAR or better sometimes, because we are getting ridiculously small ground sample distances as opposed to LiDAR. They're saying, hey, let's try this. Let's, instead of sending a LiDAR out for that section, hey, why don't you guys go out and do a photogrammetry mapping of that section, and let's compare the results. So I think that's what's happening, is that in some instances, companies are seeing that photogrammetry is going to be good enough for what they need to do. And if it's 3 times cheaper than a LiDAR company's ground mapping survey, they'll go with us. And for some applications, like let's say, for doing multiple looks, what I really like about this photogrammetry is that it's cheap enough that we can start doing, diachronic, monitoring of locations. So we can go back, repeatedly every week or every year or at some, interval, and we can record the same location, sometimes exactly with the same flight pattern. And we can give you that data over and over and over again. And for monitoring work, a lot of companies are willing to do that. And this is a public company. The water utility of Albuquerque hired us to do some mapping, and then to compare legacy data that they received from traditional engineering mapping with photogrammetry, and then show how their test sites for rehabilitating locations along the Rio Grande for the silvery minnow, see how those have changed through time. And that was a very successful project. The client was very happy with the detail of the images, because we could show them exactly how their project created habitat. And then with the visuals, we could show, and by the way, that habitat that you created was also a really great habitat for invasive species. So we could add to that, the kind of quantification from the visual data, from the orthophotography and the mapping that they never had before. They're used to having, once again, biologists on the ground with a camera, snap, 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 and then they estimate things. So now with this total coverage, we could say, well, do you want to see all 20 acres right now? Because give me a week and I'll give it to you right now. We can give it to you. And then, that's real cheap.
Nice.
Yeah. And they want to see that.
Yeah.
And they want to see this kind of, everybody is used to Google Earth now. Now they want to go deeper. They want to go a level, an order of magnitude deeper now, and they want to have that on demand, and they want to have that, to their specifications. So, that's where I think we're at in the market.
Well, you're saying deeper here, and deeper can mean a bunch of different things. So what kinds of data are you collecting? What kinds of sensors are you using? What seems to be most popular? What do you see yourself or hope to be using soon?
Well, we know that in agriculture, near-infrared imagery is used to monitor basically plant productivity, plant health, and a couple of other, density of plants. So there's, the companies that do post-processing like Drone Deploy and Pix4D, those are the two big ones right now. Esri is doing it too, but they were riding off of Pix4D for a long time. That near infrared is good for photosynthetic tracking. Visual cameras, RGB cameras for everything else. And then you have these specialty cameras. Thermal cameras are the things that people are just now kind of getting into to do a lot of other monitoring. Those thermal devices have been on planes for a long time. And part of monitoring especially buried resources, or do you have hot spots or cold spots along your line? Because either one of those can tell you something is not good, something is not normal. You need to shut down the flow and figure out that anomaly. So we're trying to figure out as a company how we can use other spectra, other photonic spectra. And of course, next is putting, not the same kind of research, high quality geomag, but putting, geomag on drones and flying geomag across territories to get kind of like, the big picture geomag of large areas. So, you're going to see just by the bulk change in and magnetic Tesla, the number of magnetic changes, you'll see big things underground. I could see that easily working in Europe, where you have a lot of buried resources. In the United States too, you want to go over an area, you might find hidden mounds or earthworks and things, with big geomag. So geomag is a new thing that's coming in for everyone. So. Yeah, so we can look at magnetics, obviously. We can look at, I haven't really seen GPR on drones yet, but I'm sure that's going to be coming, where you can do GPR, a different kind of GPR, not the ground contact GPR that everyone's used to. But GPR is going to be coming soon. We're already looking at, deeper wavelengths and, from radio all the way up to, we can't do ultraviolet, but if you're a defense contractor, maybe you want to put other types of, sensors to identify, gamma, alpha, radiation coming off of things, radioactive sensors. They're there. And of course, there's also other types of sensors we could be putting on these, anything that can sample a chemical. Why not send an H2S sensor on a drone into a plant to make sure that nobody's leaking? Those are the kinds of things that we could strap any type of sampling onto one of these vehicles and start using it. Mm-hmm. So for us as archaeologists, we have just to figure out, are we going to be ahead of the curve, or are we just going to be behind, those bleeding edge? And right now, I think because we don't have the money to develop and we don't have the time to develop new tools and resources, I think we're always going to be using stuff that comes out, basically a year or two behind the technology as it comes out, and we were figuring out an application for it. But in the conservation world in archaeology, we're going to be doing a project in western New Mexico in Navajo territory on a Kiva site, where we're going to be doing high resolution mapping to help preserve the archaeological resource. We want to do a very, very high resolution map, about 2.5 centimeters per pixel, do a digital elevation model at that resolution, then deform it, basically put it through an erosion simulation to see what parts of the site need to be managed right now for erosion, and what that percentage of probability is going to be, and how long that the state in its current management situation can last without the archaeological resource being harmed. And of course, that means, simulating rain, simulating number of events, magnitude of events, and then giving the National Park Service that information so then they can appropriately plan their conservation effort. Like, that's a great thing you can do with a drone right now.
Yeah. What software do you use to do that erosion simulation? I know you said simulating different things. Are you just doing that in a GIS?
Yeah, just a GDAL tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
nice.
simple GDAL, because
cool.
I'm a big fan of QGIS. I like that as not as a client-side platform to produce our cartography that we're letting the public see, but as a development tool, QGIS is awesome. Mm-hmm. Free is great, and the number of tools and all the GDAL resources you can run inside of it, just basically good WYSIWYG. Just what you see, what you get. Just go for it.
Thinking about that data and that big map that you want to produce for the National Park Service, this ties into our earlier conversation about, calling up a client in 20 years and saying, hey, I'm going to have to delete some of this old data. Using an example of, say, this podcast. This podcast is going to end up being a total of an hour long. I record in high quality MP3, but I edit in a lot of the stuff I edit in WAV files. And when I mix this down, I master it into a long WAV file that is about a gigabyte for an hour-long podcast. So I ended up with about 2 gigabytes of data altogether when it's all said and done, especially with 3 people on the call here. I end up with about 2 gigabytes of information. However, when I mix this down into a final MP3 file that actually gets put out onto the web, it's about 1 megabyte a minute. So we're looking at about a 55 to 65 megabyte file. Now, realistically, honestly, I'm keeping all the other stuff, but if push came to shove, really, I just need that final MP3 file. So when you're looking at all this data that you're collecting and then you're running it through all these processes and then producing these products, what is the order of operations that you would say you would need to keep and delete? Obviously, the final product is something that I would just assume you'd want to keep, but maybe not. Maybe the initial stuff so you can run other analyses on it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the way it works is I have my my pre-flight planning information. I've got a few QGIS files, very small, obviously, shape files that I use to make KMLs that get imported into my automatic flight software. So that's trivial. That's a small bit of information. But at the end of this project, I'll probably have about 8,000, maybe 10,000 images, 8 to 10 gigabytes of raw data, which I'll never get rid of. That raw data with the GPS location and obviously the picture, that's going to drive everything in the future. When I upload it to my analysis software, Pix4D, I'll typically get back from the analysis, I'll typically get back about 16 to 80 gigabytes, depending on what size of product I want to produce from those images. So now we're already in 90 gigabytes into it. And then with post-processing of that and doing whatever custom work you want to do, let's add on, some more gigs. This project by itself is going to be 100 gigabytes. Mm-hmm. And for folks who are not used to dealing with these big, project sizes, that's going to start to seem pretty daunting. And when I give the National Park Service and the New Mexico State Park this information, I'm sure that their IT department is going to say, well, what do we do with this now? Right. So they'll be in TIFF format. Obviously, a lot of these things, the orthomosaics, the digital elevation models, the contour maps, those will be shape files. Those are a little smaller. There'll be files that people who know, this to do this work, this is all standard stuff. It's just, how long are we going to do this? So part of this is I'm actually going to print paper. I'm going to print paper maps. I'm going to print this out because for archiving, at least we'll have a paper record of something. Yeah. And if this digital data ever goes away, it'll be in the New Mexico State Museum, paper recording what happened on those days by those people, and it should be preserved, for as long as we have that museum. And as the event in Brazil shows, sometimes they can go away too.
Sometimes it can. And that's a really good point to note too, because I talk to a lot of people about digital recording, from just site records and text to, maps and drone data and things like you guys are doing. And they think, wow, once this complex digital data is created digitally, it's always going to be digital. Now I have to store it digitally, but a lot of this stuff can just be printed out. We still can record it 2-dimensionally on paper and store it that way. And it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I just burned 5,000 pieces of paper printing out all of the artifact logs, all of the features. I printed out an entire data recovery, 1,300 pages of data, because I want that data to be on paper so someone can just read it.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't depend, it's like, these are the headers, here's the data, and it's all on paper.
Yeah.
And, with these, with a 3D animation, it's hard to put that on paper, but at least for, 2D representations, we can record this stuff. So there's always going to be a need for this, especially since the archives want to see this in a solid, tangible form.
Right.
Yeah, that's something that I always say, especially if you're dealing with any kind of metric or textual data, things that can be written down, make it human readable so that you can actually print it out in some poor sod somewhere in the future. If nothing else is there, they can get the paper and type the values back in. Don't make that your primary source of how you're storing your data, but make it one of the ways that you can export it.
Yeah, and my site forms, I sometimes will generate a 20 or 30 page site form because I'm putting the entire chapter that is in the volume, putting that in the site form because I know that's how people are interacting with this stuff. The electronic stuff is great, but sometimes, you need to duplicate it. There's redundancy. There's a need for all of this. So, really in this drone world, it's all high tech and it's all, it's great. We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but we do have to go back a few generations and figure that, that paper, solid paper that's not acid-based with good archival quality printing is where, we still need to be at a certain point, because I would like to see my work, in the future perpetuate.
Okay. Well, that is just about all the time that we have, Bill. Do you have any final things that we didn't ask you that you wanted to mention about the work that you're doing?
Well, I just want to tell everyone that that are thinking about drones, do it. Just do it. It's you're going to have fun doing it. That the information you record is going to be great. That, especially for students, this is for any students that are listening, get your Part 107 license, get out there and learn these techniques. Become fluent in some GIS program to where if someone says, I need you to make a map because our GIS department guy is sick and I need this tomorrow, you can step up and say, I can do it. So get yourself, acquainted with this technology, get yourself a license and get yourself acquainted with doing GIS on your own. And if you're a student, even if you're a professional, you will always use those skills.
Outstanding. Well, that's good advice, and hopefully some people will do that. I'm really looking forward to, like I said before, seeing a Shovelbones post that includes Part 107 license, because that's just how we're doing things these days. So,
well,
all right.
Maybe we'll be doing that in the future. We'll see.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bill, for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Tired of the webinars and training offered by the big organizations not being free for members and not really covering what we need? Team Black has the answers. Check out arccert.black/main for our upcoming webinar schedule. All of our webinars happen once a month and seating is limited. Learn everything from field tech basics to drones to digital workflows. We have more classes coming online every month. Classes are always 1 hour and cost just $20. Classes like building a CV and getting a job are always free. That's right. We'll help you get a job, then we'll be here when you want to level up your skills. If you are a professional subscriber to the APN at arcpodnet.com/members, then you get all of Team Black's offerings for free as part of your membership. We have Team Black memberships coming that will give the same for the APN. So $20 a month gets you all the APN swag and extras, plus free training from Team Black. So check out arccert.black for more information and level up your skill set today. That's arccert.black. This network is listener supported. We're trying to move away from paid advertising while also creating new shows and supporting the ones we have. The APN has never and will never make a serious profit on our podcast. Every little dime we make goes back into the network and improving show quality. So become a member today at www.archpodnet.com/members to show your support, get some extras, and be a benefactor for archaeological education. Members get stickers, a coffee mug, a t-shirt, bonus content, early access to episodes, a private Slack team to talk to other members and the hosts, and full access to training on Team Black over at arccert.black. So check out our memberships at www.archpodnet.com/members today and support archaeological education. That's www.archpodnet.com/members. Now back to the show. All right, welcome back to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 88, and this is the App of the Day segment. And I think I'll just go first here because I'm so excited to talk about this thing that I saw a few months ago. And I actually emailed this company to try to get a demo model, but they're all in Germany, and I don't think they understood, and they didn't really know what was going on. So I just bought it. And it's a physical thing tied to an app, and it's called Timemular, and it's timemular.com. Now, I've had a lot of problems in the past tracking project time. You know, there's Toggle is out there, but Toggle is an app. You know, it's got a Chrome extension if you use Chrome all the time, so that makes it a little easier. But most of these things require you, when you're switching projects, or let's say you're working on a project that's billable to a client, and every archaeologist out there can understand what I'm talking about, and most other people who aren't archaeologists also know what I'm talking about. So you're billing time to a client, or billing time even to a project. Let's just say you want to track how much time you spend doing a thing. To do that with most of these apps, you have to go and, open up your phone or your watch or your computer and start and stop and do the thing. And I'll be honest, I forget. 9 times out of 10, I forget until it's like 10 minutes into it. And they're like, what time did I switch? Damn it. It just fails completely. Well, Timemular has desktop and smartphone applications, and also an 8-sided object. I don't know how many is 8 sides. An octahedron. It's an octahedron. And
it's beautiful. It looks like a big D&D die.
Oh, it's enormous too. It's huge. It's about a little smaller than a hardball, I would say, for baseball, and super light. I mean, it weighs nothing. There's just a little bit of circuitry inside of it, and you basically assign each one of the sides to an activity, and they give you this pen you can draw on it with, or they give you stickers like little phone sticker, email sticker, stuff like that. But I didn't really need to track those types of things. I'd rather track when I get a phone call. If that's for DigTech, I want to flip it to the DigTech side. If it's for the APN, I want to flip it to the APN side. And then I can leave a note in there later on, or if I don't want to at all, it doesn't matter, about what I was working on during that thing. So this is a physical object that it comes with this little stand. So when it's in its stand and there's one of the points is facing up, it's off. You're not tracking any time. You pull it off the stand, and whatever side is face up, you're instantly tracking that time. And then if I get a Slack message in another channel, or I get an email I need to respond to, or something like that, I just got to do something real quick, I flip it to one of the other sides that represents that task, and then it stops recording the other one and starts recording the new one instantaneously. I don't do anything else. And then I can, move it around. I travel around with me in my backpack. I take it to the coffee shop. I take it wherever I'm going now. And if I forget it or I don't need it for some reason, I can also just start and stop the time on my phone like normal, the old way that I don't like doing. So, and I've forgotten to do that. Like, I haven't brought this thing with me sometimes, and then I'm just trying to track my time on the phone using the same app. And it fails because I suck at doing that. But this makes it real easy. I mean, the thing is sitting right in front of me, and I took my label maker and I made labels for all 8 sides, and it's really great. And I absolutely love this thing. I think it's 99 euros to buy the device. But right now on their website, I actually did the deal where you get it for 49 euros and then 9 euros a month for you pay for 6 months up front. So I think the total cost with shipping was free from Germany, which is pretty great. But I think the total cost of shipping was like $104 or $114 or something like that. And that gives me 6 months of the heavily integrated service. You don't need the heavy integration if you don't want to. You can still track eight activities, but you get timesheets. I figured I'd try the full suite of things. for this first 6 months and then see if I like it. And if I don't, I just simply stop paying. And now I just have a device that tracks my time and doesn't have that full integration. So I think it's pretty great. It's neat that it's an app tied to a physical device. And if the physical device stops working, you still have the app. But you do need the app and you do need internet connectivity for it to track your time. Well, not necessarily internet connectivity because it comes with one of those little USB plugs like a mouse comes with sometimes. And if you plug that into your computer, then it doesn't need a Bluetooth. Otherwise, it Bluetooths to your phone. The other nice thing is it's not always draining the energy from Bluetooth because it only really activates itself when it's moved. So when you move it to a new face, it knows immediately when that happened, and then it takes the time to make that Bluetooth connection and then go back in time and track that time that you moved it, and then shuts Bluetooth off again, and then doesn't turn it back on until you flip it again. So the battery inside is just one of those little coin batteries. It should last for an incredibly long period of time because it's super low energy. So I don't know. Does it look like something? It looks pretty cool, doesn't it, Paul? I just couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, it really does. It looks like something you want to play with, which I think is the kind of the idea.
Right.
They could take this class of software that I've never fortunately I've never really needed to use time tracking software like that. But even in those cases where I've tried to use it, it always kind of fails for me. So just removing that from being purely a software thing and making it a physical object is a cool take on it. And it's a nice looking little object. It's it's a decoration, if nothing else, on your desk. It's not embarrassing looking or weird looking. No.
Yeah, it really is. And I've toyed with the idea of if I have just a ton of stuff to do and I can't figure out what to do next, just rolling it like a dice, whatever side pops up. That's what I'm working on now. Oh, man. All right. So that's pretty cool. Check it out. We'll have the link in the show notes. So go ahead, Paul, with your app of the day.
All right, my app of the day is not so much one particular app as another class, and I'm talking about today because I just found out about this kind of app today. I took a CPR class this morning, and at the end of it, the trainer said, "Oh, you should go on the App Store and download the First Aid app from the Red Cross." So I went on the App Store, and right under the Red Cross First Aid app and the Red Cross Pet First Aid app, there was a heart rate monitor app, and it said that it used the camera, and I thought, well, that's interesting. It probably won't work with my phone because, like I've said before, I've got an older iPhone, an iPhone 6, and it said that it was compatible with it. So cool. I downloaded that app and took my pulse right there, and nice. It worked perfectly, which was really pretty amazing to me because whenever I've used the exercise watches that have the little pulse rate monitor thing on them, those barely ever work for me. I've got terrible circulation in my fingers. I have Raynaud's phenomenon, and they just can't seem to pick it up. I mean, if my fingers are having a spasm, even the doctor's one, the things that clip on your fingertip, won't read my pulse. But this worked just fine. I admittedly was not having any kind of reaction from the Raynaud's. So the one that I downloaded was the top one there, Instant Heart Rate by Azumio, and it looked beautiful and worked fine. And then when I launched it the second time so that I could, do a deeper dive into the program to discuss it here on the podcast, I couldn't get back into it. It said I need to sign up. I could log in with Facebook, or I could sign up in order to do it. So I quit the app, hoping that it would reset. But no, it knew that I'd already used it once, and I had to go make an account in order to continue to use this app. And I thought, well, I don't particularly like that for this little kind of one-trick pony. So I looked again for heart rate monitors in the App Store specifically, not First Aid like I did the first time. And I downloaded the next one down the list. And so this one is called Heart Rate Monitor by Wenpeng Zhang. And I guess that's probably a one-man shop. Beautiful little app. Works perfectly. The only complaint I'll have about this particular one is it pops up advertisements constantly. I do believe that there's a paid version of it. And basically what you do, you put your finger over the lens and over the light on your phone and hit start, And a few seconds later, it picks up your pulse. And after a few seconds of reading it, so it's got a fairly constant reading, it displays it for you. You can link it in with the Health Center on Apple iOS, and it'll push that pulse over to the Health Center, which is all really cool. Again, I don't know that this is the best of these kind of apps. It's only one that I've had on my phone for a few hours today, and I've only played with it a couple of times. I don't particularly obsess about my heart rate, so it's not something that I'm doing all the time. But we often talk about the cool stuff about with the phones is that, a lot of things that used to be separate hardware are now kind of rolled into this one all-in-one device that we carry on us all the time. And this is something that in retrospect is pretty obvious, but in implementation is really cool. And now, if I should need it, I've got a simple heart rate monitor that seems to be pretty damn accurate sitting here on the phone. So, take a look at it. If this is something that is important to you for your health, you might want to take a look and see what your phone is capable of doing, because it looks like there are a bunch of these apps out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I've seen a ton of heart rate apps when I've looked before. Now I have my Apple Watch, and it is actually halfway decent at taking my heart rate, because I've checked it. I was skeptical at how good it was, and I've done just the standard pulse finger against your neck kind of thing to check my heart rate, and it seems on most of the time. So and that's pretty great. And I like how it doesn't track it all the time unless you're doing a workout. So it just does it like every 10 minutes or something like that. And then if you're doing a workout, it's continuous. So that's pretty cool. But it's pretty neat to be able to use the camera and flash on your phone to just do it whenever you want. That's pretty sweet.
No, it was really ingenious. I don't know who came up with this idea first, but kudos to them for figuring out how you can use this hardware that everybody's already carrying around with them. Yeah,
there you go. And I think that other one wanted you to sign up with Facebook because let's go deep conspiracy theory on this. So they're going to record. They're going to record your heart rate and what your pulse typically is. And then when we have cameras sensitive enough that are commercially available to see you out in the wild, it'll be able to see that pulsing in your neck and then identify you and target ads towards you. That's my thought.
Oh, perfect.
Right?
So I'm glad that I didn't keep that first one around. The second one is just throwing ads at me in the app itself.
Nice.
And way too many. Every time you hit some button, it does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's beautifully designed. This heart rate monitor, the second one that I found, and we'll put a link in the show notes because I'm sure there are dozens of apps out there, all named heart rate monitor, heart rate light, heart rate free, heart rate this, heart rate that. Yeah, and we don't want to give you a heart attack trying to figure out the one you want to use.
Right. Does that second one you downloaded, does that have a purchase option to get rid of the ads?
Probably, because when I look at the icon on the screen here, it says heart rate light. Even though the name is heart rate monitor, so that suggests that there's a paid version. So again, this is something I just found out about a few hours ago, and I haven't had much chance to play with them because it's school is opening tomorrow, and we've been swamped all day today. But just bolt from the blue. Oh, it's so obvious.
Nice. Okay, well, I think we'll call it right there then. Check out these links. We've got Timular, and I've got the other two written down. I'm not sure which one Paul's going to give me, but probably we'll try both.
I'll give you both on the show notes, and people can make their own decisions.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you, Paul, very much for joining me this week.
Thanks, Chris.
And we'll see everybody else in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Archaeotech Podcast. Links to items mentioned on the show are in the show notes at www.arcpodnet.com/archaeotech. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com and paul@lugal.com. Support the show by becoming a member at arcpodnet.com/members. The music is a song called Off-Road and is license free from Apple. Thanks for listening.
This show is produced and recorded by the Archaeology Podcast Network, Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, in Reno, Nevada, at the Reno Collective.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.